Hi and welcome back to another So It's Saved video. Please like and subscribe to the videos and share them around as much as you like. Today we're finally going to be looking at Fobbing, and it was a little bit tricky to know where to start with Fobbing because there is so many ghost stories around there and myths and tales. We've got a lady who died in a pub who's meant to haunt it. We've got time slips. We've got a headless coachman. We've got all types of stories coming up from Fobbing, so I hope you're going to enjoy this one. So first of all, as always, we can start looking at the history of the location. So this is Fobbing in Thurrock in Essex, just down the hill from Horndon on the Hill. So with Fobbing, the first thing to put it on the map was about 42 AD when the Romans come in and made little settlements around the area, and they used one area, or the vineyards, where they grew all their crops to make wine. It faces the south, so it always got sun, so it's a perfect location over there. And to this day you can still find where they made other ales and beers, that you can find the hops, wild hops, that grow around the area. Of course, you can't talk about Fobbing without mentioning the poll tax riots. And as you know, we've got Wat Tyler Park over the side. Of course, it wasn't him himself who started the poll tax riots. It was Thomas Baker, who apparently killed a tax collector in Brentwood that triggered all the events that went on to be the Pence Revolt in 1381. It'd only be fair to mention someone who is no longer with us, and it's Randall Bingley. Randall Bingley wrote a book on Fobbing, Life and Landscapes, and if you like your history of the local history, I really advise you to go and get it. It's a great book. It's got so much history in there of the local area, stories of the Blitz and everything from Fobbing's point of view as a village. It's an incredible book. Fobbing itself was a really important location in Thurrock. It had a landing stage. This allowed it to be a great area for trade to come in and out, with the wool market up in Horndon and direct links down the Thames to London. Okay, so our first place we're going to look at is the White Lion pub, which is situated just on the top of the hill into Fobbing. Now, built around in the 15th century, it's one of our oldest pubs around the area, and it is steeped in history. One of the most common ghost stories about this, and we have some sort of evidence to back this up. Not the ghost story itself, but actually the events that took place. So what we have is the landlord's daughter was murdered within the pub, and it's said to have been by the landlord himself. So one night he pushed her down the stairs and killed her, and she is now said to be haunting the stairway within the pub and up and down the landing area across the top. Now that is recently been let out to people who can stay there, rent the accommodation above it, and they often report hearing footsteps across the landing area and going into the back rooms, and this would link up to where the lady would have died or fell from. So the landlord's daughter is often called the White Lady, that is often seen around the pub area. Is often seen wearing a maid's uniform, and this is where we believe that he killed her in a fit of rage down the stairs. And it does match with a lot of reports that old staff have seen of the lady walking up and down the stairs and crying at the bottom of the stairs. This event is said to have happened around about 1782, and we do have some lists of people who were residents there, which was John and Rebecca Frost at the time. I can't link that with the daughter that would have passed away. We do actually have other reports of children that haunt the area, and they date back to maybe the 12-year-old children of that couple who are said to have passed away at that time as well. Now, in Randall's book, he does list about these children in there, but he does actually list about them dying. As we move down into the main area of the White Lion, there are reports of people hearing the name Sam or Samuel being called out. Now, that's actually quite important, because in the time of 1840, the actual innkeeper at the time was Samuel Wade, and we don't know if that is what they're picking up on or the names that have been heard, but people have reported seeing gentlemen or ghostly figures of the gentlemen sitting in the bar area late at the night time. That brings us to another ghost that is often seen in the main bar area. Now this is the ghost of Captain William Morey. He was actually executed for shooting a farmhand. Now the farmhand didn't die immediately, he died of lockjaw a few weeks later, but the gentleman was still executed for it, and he's said to be seen sitting in the corner of the pub with a big tanker of beer and just drinking it. Pretty a harmless spirit or ghost. So there is, I say, we've got lots of these sort of things that go on around Fobbing. It has great maritime history to it. We have reports of French pirates washing up down at the dock, and their bodies being carried up and buried into the church, outside the church walls and things like this. We also have reports of quite gross and gruesome reports of locals finding parts of human bodies and skeletons, often found around the village, where the wild boars at the time would go into the cemetery and dig them up and run around the town with them. The pub was often used as a holding place as well for people that were going to go on to trial. So we have reports of the two witches, Joan and Mary Bell, that were charged with witchcraft, that was taken to Chelmsford, but prior to that they were held in the pub itself. There's a rumour the old signpost that is outside the White Lion is an old hanging post. I can't confirm that, Randall can't confirm that at the time, but it did seem that a lot of people did believe that. I'm not going to say it's true, but have a look at it and see what you think. One of the myths that we can't rule out that we hear about the White Line is the tunnels that go from the White Line down to the dock area. Now I can definitely confirm there are tunnels in Fobbing. I'll show you some photos of an entrance of that one of those in the old shipping cottages, and they are reported to go up to the old rectory as well. Now at the time, the landlord of the White Lion, they had flooding problems within the bottom of the inn at the time, so we couldn't actually see that, but he did say there looked like there was an entrance down there, a bricked up entrance down at the bottom, but all that area tends to flood now, so it's not really used. This would have been an ideal place for the local smugglers to bring up contraband along through Fobbing without being seen and into the inn. On the outside of the White Lion, we also have reports of a girl. Now again, we have a little bit of history to link up with this one. So this girl is often seen walking around the entrance of the courtyards by the big gates, crying and calling out for her mum. What we have for this is there was actually a report of a 12-year-old girl that fell from a horse or pushed from a horse and died at those gates. So it's that thing that this is where we like the history backing up these ghost reports. These ghost stories, they come from a lot of different sources, not just local people. Some of these have been recorded in the Ghost Tales of Essex. There's a book called that you can go and look at. And so this is a combination of local myths and legends that have been built up over the time. As I say, but with this one, this little girl is often seen around by the right hand side of the gate. And when she's seen, she's not quite a full figure, but she also seems to try to interact with people who do see her, as if she's asking for their help. So it's actually quite a spooky one if you ever did happen to see her. Although seeing a ghost is quite spooky anyway. Very spooky. If you do see. Moving on to one of my favourite places in Fobbing, and that is the shipping cottages. Now these are just two lovely cottages that sit down right at the bottom of the hill, right next to Fobbing Hall, which we understand from the last video was actually owned by Anne Boleyn's father at the time. Now the shipping cottages have got so many little ghost stories, and now I'm very aware that people do live in them, but at the time it was great. The people who owned one of them gave us full access to their cottage, and we was able to go down into the cellar to see the entrance to the tunnels that went up to the rectory or to the White Lion. So it was great to see the evidence there. They've also got a big well in their garden that goes down, and that back garden is made up of part of the dock area, the old landing stage. So what we have here, we have reports of heavy boots walking across the top of the landing. Now these whole pub down there, the shipping cottages, have now been made into two separate buildings. At that time it was just one big inn, the ship inn. So the top of the pub, you could walk the full length of it. So these reports of these boots seem to pass through the walls, and what we have is obviously a lot of sailors would come and stay there. These ghosts that are often reported have French accents, which links with the idea of these French pirates that have been washed up along the shores. It's There's a lot of history around there. Obviously, the French people that have been washed up, and the pirate history. You've got to remember that until recently, apparently, well, they say it's legal to kill a Dutchman in Canvey through the Dutch conflict with us. And you remember that there's a cannonball up at the church in Fobbing that was fired from a Dutch ship that hit the church tower. So we have a lot of history around there with conflicts, and you can imagine it being quite a busy place and quite a hectic place, and linked with all sort of the violent history of the area as well at the time. There's no surprise that we're going to have these pirates and all that pop up from time to time again. One of the other interesting things that was found in the shipping cottages, and found at another location that I'll go on to later, was the witch's bottle. So the witch's bottle was found buried inside the wall. Now they do have a witch's bottle down at Front Museum that you can go and look at. I don't know if it's still on display, but these bottles were often filled with things like fingernails, cat's hair, human hair, a bit of blood, all these sort of things to ward off the evil spirits of the witches. And these potions were often made by people like Joan and Mary Bell, who then got convicted of being a witch, or they were actually let off. But they used to be the local medicine people around the area. And you remember that before we had this really negative view of witches, they were seen as somebody you'd go to if you felt ill and you could get a potion to make you feel better. And then everything sort of turned against them, and it was an easy way. If somebody didn't like somebody, they'd call them a witch and end up getting them hung or burnt or whatever. But within the area, they would make these witch bottles and you'd bury them inside the walls of the cottages to ward off the witches and the evil spirits. One of the things with the shipping cottages, they're actually linked with Charles Dickens. So it's reported that Charles Dickens' grandparents actually owned the shipping cottages at some period of time, and Charles Dickens would actually come over from Kent up the Thames and stay at the shipping cottages, which would make sense when you think that the Thames and this area does feature quite heavily in some of his novels. Just moving up the hill now into Fobbing, we have St Michael's Church. St Michael's Church has got a very mixed history. It actually fell into disrepair for a period of its time. It wasn't used, and during this period of time it was rumoured that black magic or people performing black magic would congregate around the area and use it. The walls of the church, the boundary of the church I should say, used to be a lot bigger, and the graveyards there, that is why people who have more modern developments often find bodies and skeletons popping up in their gardens. I know that recent work that was done in Pell House, which is the old rectory next to it, along their garden extension, they actually did come across a lot of skeletons where the walls of the building had been moved over the years. I was aware of a lot of local ghost stories around the church and the negative feeling people felt down one side of the church. And on our investigation, we did things like EMF readings and stuff like that. I didn't find it very uncomfortable myself. I often go up to the churchyard on my own, looking at the graveyards there, trying to find names on there and stuff like that. I don't find it a very foreboding place. It's actually quite a pleasant churchyard, as churchyards can be. But I was lucky enough to speak to a resident who actually lived on the back of it to confirm one of the ghost stories. Now this ghost story is about a glowing pirate's grave. She said of a night time she could look out of her kitchen window and see a gravestone that would glow, and on that gravestone was a French name and a skull and crossbones. Now we know that skull and crossbones on graves don't always mean they were pirates, but what we do know that when French pirates' bodies weren't reclaimed, they were buried in that churchyard. And we also have the ghost story of a French pirate ghost walking around the churchyard. Now, I don't understand why ghosts would actually visit a churchyard. I'm sure they've got better things to do. Maybe he's just trying to find a way out. I don't know. I just think if I was a ghost, I would do something better than that. But it is quite a common report. Now, this glowing grave, we've spent hours trying to find a glowing grave up there. Not found it yet, but we have found a number of French graves up there with the skull and crossbones on. So it is worth you going up and have a look around yourself and see if you can spot the glowing grave for yourself. it could be a reason for it. It could be the stone that was used at the time. It could be fluorescent. It could be anything. But you know, we've had quite a few confirmations of this glowing grave, so it'd be interesting if you can see it and what your feelings are yourself of it. What we'll look at now is Pell House, which is next to it. Now, Pell House is quite steeped in controversy. It was reported that one vicar, once he went and visited, he was quite surprised by the Reverend's rather large, well-stocked wine cellars with a tunnel leading down to the dockyard. So we believe it was a smuggler's little store hole that was being helped by the old rectory at the time. When work was being done to renovate the current building itself, workmen would often find their tools being moved around, or their tools would disappear. I know I spoke to one workman that had left his jigsaw on the side, and when he come back, literally 30 seconds later, it was turned on the other side of the room. So we have lots of reports of things like that happening. What we don't have is being able to speak to people who have lived there for a long period of time to actually understand their experiences of what has gone on. I can only go by the old reports that I have, and they are people seeing ghostly figures going in and out of the building, or in and out of the gates on the outside of the building. I mean, we have a lot of local residents along there that have not really seen anything, but it does seem that travellers that are going through that area do tend to see more spirits or ghosts than what the locals do. Talking of locals, what we do have is the time slip. Now, the time slip is something that I haven't really come across locally at all, and this one was reported, I can't remember if it was either in Randall's book or in a Essex Ghost Stories book, and it was two ladies that were standing at the top of Fobbing Hill and overlooked a big Victorian building down below. They had a nice great big pond out there that they had people having a tea party in the garden, and they thought, oh, tomorrow we're going to walk down and try and see that building. We've not really noticed it before. The next day they met there, and just didn't exist. That building did not exist. So apparently this is, if you go stand at the corner of the top of the hill by the White Line pub, and look to your left where the farmyard is down there at the moment. Now I understand there's quite a lot of high bushes there, but that is where I believe they were standing and looking over into the distance and could see this large building that was over there with all these people having a tea party. Now we're aware that obviously over that area at one point you would have Cottages, and there's a lot more pubs around the area before it was all redeveloped for the oil refineries and all that. So I can't say that I can't find no listing for that building. I've looked on local maps. I can't track where that building could have been, but this is another reported story we have of Fobbing. So there is a lot of reports of Fobbing, and I'm not going to cover all of them in this video because I don't want to go on too long. I've sort of rushed through quite a lot of them as well, so I may do a more detailed one on each individual area later on. Depends if people like the videos or not. I've done a lot of ghost walks with people, local people in Fobbing, and they've enjoyed them. They like all the deep history of it. So there's a lot more to tell about Fobbing, and hopefully I'll return to it another time. But again, give me a thumbs up and give me a subscription. Thank you. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.